Okay, this is the National 5 Biology Exam 2026. You've all been waiting for this, I'm sure. And I'm going to give you my take on it. I sat down and did it after the students had finished their exam and I was given a copy of the exam paper. This is now handed out by Qualifications Scotland. I'll put a disclaimer in the screen here so that everybody's clear about who owns this paper. It's not me. I'm using it to help you with your learning and your success in biology, because one of the things you want to do really after you have done an exam is sit down and as soon as possible get the right answers, or get the answers laid out, because it's a really good learning moment is to get the answers. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that all my answers are correct. I don't have any marking instructions. I'm not a marker. So I'm just giving you my take on the exam. And you see if you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments. And let's get on with it. Okay, so which of the following cell structures contain chlorophyll? Well, that's nice and easy. That's just basic learning. And that's going to be your chloroplast. The chloroplast carries out photosynthesis. You need chlorophyll for photosynthesis. There you go. Bob's your uncle. Question number 2. A piece of potato that was left in a solution for 24 hours was found to have increased in mass. The cells of the potato had... Well, they've increased in mass, water's gone in by osmosis. 24 hours is enough to fill up those cells and make them turgid. And that's what a plant cell full of water is called, the turgid cell. Okay, messenger RNA is produced in the... Okay, this is the first real trickery that we come across. In fact, the problem here is knowing too much rather than not knowing enough in some ways, because let's say, first of all, let's eliminate the ones that aren't right. So ribosome is wrong. Messenger RNA is not produced in the ribosome, and it's not produced in the ribosome at all. So then we're left with this thing. Is complementary to the DNA strand or is identical to the DNA strand? Well, you got 2 DNA strands, right? And when messenger RNA is transcribed from one DNA strand, it's complementary to the one it's transcribed from, but it's also identical technically to the opposite one, except for the substitution of uracil bases for thymine bases. But anyway, I think the answer they're looking for here is in the nucleus, is complementary to the DNA strand from which it was transcribed. I think that's the answer they're intending. But again, if you know a little bit more, it becomes a slightly trickier question. I think that most people will have got that, though. The diagram represents 3 stages of an enzyme-controlled reaction. You've got to identify which of these things in the diagram is the enzyme. Well, that's your enzyme, J. That's your substrate, K. And M and N are your products. So let's make sure we get those. So K is your substrate, J is your enzyme, and either M or N is a product. So we're going to go for D. Right. After the process of genetic engineering, a host bacterial cell will... It will contain a modified plasmid, right? After the process of genetic engineering, a host bacterial cell will contain the modified plasmid. It won't have a required gene extracted. You don't take it out of your at the end. It'll not be missing a plasmid, and it will not have a source chromosome inserted because the gene is taken out of the chromosome. So it has to contains a modified plasmid. Okay? I mean, there might be some question over the word host there, but you're putting your plasmid you're transforming bacteria with your plasmid, so it's now a host to the new plasmid. That's the way I read it anyway. Which type of proteins control respiration? Well, the proteins that are in charge of all the chemical reactions in the body are the enzymes. Okay, so they're the fellows we need for that. Let's move on. Diagram represents a stage in the process of mitosis. Okay, we've got something labelled X, we've got something labelled Y. And there's your rather square-looking cell. Which row on the table identifies structures X and Y? Well, let's just identify them. So structure X is a chromosome, and structure Y is a spindle. Now, the trick here is that when the doubled-up chromosomes, which are called chromatids, migrate to the equator, they're called chromatids, but then the chromatids are pulled apart, and as soon as they're pulled apart, they become chromosomes again, and they're pulled back into the nuclei, so where the nucleus is going to form at the poles of the cell. So the trick here is not to call these chromatids, I think. Y is spindle fiber, so that's definitely Y. So you got spindle fiber there and chromatid, and you're going to pick chromosome, I think, for this one. That's my money's on that one anyway. The flow chart shows how water concentration is controlled in the human body. Brain detects a decrease in water concentration. Hormone is released. Kidneys regulate water concentration. Brain detects the water concentration, returns to normal. Receptors for this hormone will be found in. So the hormone is there. Hormone's released. The hormone goes into the blood and causes something to act, which is the kidneys. So the hormone receptors have to be on the kidneys. So we're going to go for C, the kidney. Okay. Kidneys, there's two of them. Okay, so which of these cells is haploid? Right, red blood cell doesn't have a nucleus at all. The ovum is haploid. The zygote is diploid. The companion cell, we see that with the phloem. That's also diploid, so we're going to go for ovum. There is a funny thing about the ovum, but you'll learn about that in the higher. Okay, so which of these characteristics are both examples of continuous variation? Right, you're wanting something that is not an either-or setup. So blood group could be A, B, or O, or AB, or right. So that's very clear distinction. Eye color, again, blue, brown, green, grey. These are fairly distinct. So blood group and eye color are what we call discrete variation. Mass of things and length of things tend to be continuous variation because quite a lot of it's environmental anyway. So we're going to go for leaf length and seed mass because that's the only one that contains two continuous variations. Okay, so pea plants, the alleles for hairy stems is dominant. Okay, let's just do this. In pea plants, the allele for hairy stems is dominant and the allele for smooth stems is recessive. 2 heterozygous pea plants were crossed and 180 offspring were produced. What would be the expected number of pea plants with smooth stems? Okay, 2 heterozygous pea plants, so let's go big hairy and little hairy and big hairy and little hairy. Do that cross, right? So the big hairy is dominant, is H, so that's going to be hairy, isn't it? Hairy stems is dominant. Okay, H, 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 and H, H. So the only one that's in the absence of the dominant is this one here, which is 25% of your offspring. So 25% of 180, what's that? So it's 45, isn't it? 45. Check on your calculator. I'm not going to answer. Let's just label the letter. All right. So 45% is, so you can, if you really want to, just multiply 180 by 0.25 or 25 over 100. All right. So in plants, sugar is transported up and down in dead phloem cells, up and down in living phloem cells, only down in living phloem cells, or only up in dead phloem cells. Now, this one caused me a bit of thinking because I've never really considered what's going on in the phloem cells in terms of direction, but a lot of the direction that's going on is transport by living cells, and I imagine living cells can put it both up and down. I wasn't sure about the answer when I first read this. I'm still not entirely sure, but I'm going to go up and down. So up and down in living phloem cells. We might do an edit there. Okay. So that's what I think. Only down in living phloem cells. I don't think it's not the opposite. You might have thought that it's the opposite of xylem, which is where you would get caught out there maybe. But phloem transports materials all over the plant, so I think it has to be up and down. Well, everywhere. In fact, left and right as well. Okay. Right, here's an interesting one, I thought. I haven't seen at National 5 a graph with two axes on it before in an exam. So this is interesting, right? So what you have to do in this, they do this a lot in higher. You see a lot of these kind of graphs in higher, and what you have to do is make sure you're reading the right axis, okay? So read the axis label. This is the rate of water loss. That's the rate of water gain. Graph shows the rate of water loss and water gain by plants in 24 hours, right? Now, what was the rate of water gain at 3 p.m.? So they're just asking you to pick this axis. There's 3 p.m. and you pick the right axis. Rate of water gain is this dashed line and this scale. And the rate of water loss is the solid line and that scale. So we're going up 3 p.m. and we're going up to the dashed line, right, for rate of water gain. We're going up to the dashed line, which is there at 3 p.m. So I'm going to put a cross in there, and I'm going to take that across to here, and I'm going to say, this is, remember, rate of water gain, I'm going to go 25. Now, if you're going to be picky about this, you could say that if at the same time the plant is losing 90 grams per minute of water, and it's gaining 25 grams per minute of water, then there's going to be some difference, but you can't actually get a subtraction out of that. So I don't think that's the case, right? Because it would technically be water loss. You would technically have a negative. So they're just asking for you to pick that point on the graph. So don't worry if you thought about thinking that it could have been the difference between these two. I mean, technically it probably is, because it's losing water at the same time as it's gaining water. So that's not straightforward, right? Okay. But anyway, I think that's the answer. The table shows the average blood pressure measurement for 3 different blood vessels. Let's have a look. Blood pressure, artery 90, capillary 15, vein 3. Percentage decrease in blood pressure when blood flows from a capillary into a vein is a capillary into a vein. So let's just think here. The capillary is into the vein. So the decrease, so it's what we want here is the change over the total, or the start. Change over the start we'll have here, because it's a change over the start times 100, okay? The change is 15 minus 3 is 12, so it's 12 over start's 15 times 100, and if you do that sum, you get the answer 80, okay? I think that's the way you work that one out. Let me know if you think any different. Okay, so, ay caramba, look at this for a multiple choice question. Right, the 3 athletes followed 6-month training regime. I'll let you read that. You can pause the video and read it yourself. The point of this is that we have to figure out which of these statements is not correct using the table, all right? So which of the following statements is not correct? Athlete W's fitness improved the least over the 6-month training program. Okay, we've got some absolute values here, and you might think that a proper way of doing this would be to do this by percentages, so you'd have a percentage change rather than absolute values. But anyway, they haven't got percentage changes, so we're just looking at absolute values, right? Athlete W started at 59, athlete X started at 39, athlete Y started at 45, so we should really be looking at percentage difference, but we're not. That's okay. Absolute values. So we'll just use the absolute values, and athlete W's fitness improved the least over the 6-month training program. Is that true? Athlete W went from 59 to 70. What's that? That's about, well, let's call it 10.8, shall we? Is that about it? 11.8? 11.8? Is that less than athlete X, which is 39 to 53, and 45 to 57? Okay, that's true. So we'll give that a tick, shall we? Let's tick that. That's true. We have to find out which one is not true. Athlete X's fitness improved the most over the 6-month training program. Athlete X, the most, 39 to 53. So that's about 14 and something. We've got 45 to 57. That's 12-ish. And 59 to 70. That's 12-ish. So I think that's true. Okay, athlete Y's fitness improved the least in the first 3 months. Oh, caramba. I hope everybody had plenty of time to do this question. Okay, so athlete Y's fitness improved the least in the first 3 months of the training program. So the first 3 months, athlete Y the least. 45 to 51 is 6.5. 39 to 50 is, well, it's 11-ish. And 59 to 67, that is more than 6.5, because that's gone to 7. Okay, so that's also true. He was the least, or she was the least. Could be a female. I don't know. Don't say any genders up here. So that only leaves one. All the athletes' fitness had improved by more than 25% by the end of the training program. Right? All of the athletes by more than 25%. So they're looking at a percentage change now. And, well, you could work it all out, I suppose. Or you could just say that those are all true, so this has to be wrong. But let's have a quick look. All of them, we only have to calculate one and find it wrong, I suppose. So 59 to 70, what's that change? That change is 11.8, right? Is 11.8 25% of 70? 70.8 times 0.25. 17. That's not. So it would have to be more than 25%, would be 17. 59 plus 17. So that's definitely wrong. Okay. So we're going to go for D. Nutrients from food are absorbed by the villi in the small intestine, or the villi. The diagram shows a villus. And we've got structure G and structure H. Let's just make sure, look at those lines, they're very narrow. Structure G is pointing at this thing in the middle, which is the lacteal, and structure H is pointing at the blood vessels. Okay, so H is blood vessel, and G is lacteal. It says, which row in the table identifies a substance absorbed by each of the labelled structures? Now, you've got to be careful here because you can easily lose track of what you're thinking as you start loading up with more information down here. Structure G, let's just start with it. Lacteal is going to absorb, structure G is the first one, lacteal is going to absorb fats and glycerol, right? Fatty acids and glycerol. So glucose is wrong. Fatty acids is right, fatty acids is right, glucose is wrong. Okay, we're down to 2. Structure H now is not going to be absorbing glycerol because it's blood. It's going to be amino acids, so we're going to go for C. Okay. Let's go to question 17. Interspecific competition occurs between individuals of the same species for a few of the resources they require. Not the same species because it's interspecific, so we'll just take out these same species, right? Different species for a few of the resources they require, or different species for all the resources they require. Now, only members of your own species require all the same resources as you do. So that's not going to be interspecific competition. I mean, some very, very closely related species may come very close to all the resources. But remember, in intraspecific competition, you're competing for mates as well, which another species is not doing. So we're going to have to go for C in this one, right? So that's wrong, right? Different species for a few of the resources they require. An example of an abiotic factor affecting a population of fish in a river could be, well, fungal is biotic, so that's wrong. Predation from large birds, that's biotic, so that's wrong. Competition is biotic, so that's wrong. Has to be decreasing water pH due to pollution. All right. Question 19. Table shows a number of different invertebrates collected from several pitfall traps in a woodland ecosystem. They had a bit of a riff on a pitfall trap last year. I wonder how many of them are in this year's exam. Earthworm 8. Right, woodlice 10, spiders 12, beetles 34, flatworms 16. Okay, percentage of all the invertebrates were earthworms. What percentage of all the invertebrates were earthworms? It was worth checking they're all invertebrates. They are. So what you need to know is what 8 is as a percentage of the total. So add these all up and you get 80, right? And then 8 over 80 times 100 equals 10, right? 10. So there you go. 10 is going to be your answer, B. The table shows the effect of grazing intensity on the number of plant species. Now this was a tricky old devil of a question. Let's just have a think about this one. Table shows the effects of grazing intensity on the number of plant species, right? So here, low grazing, moderate grazing, high grazing. Number of annual species, number of perennial plant species, right? 1, 8, 9, 11. Okay. We've got the table in our heads. Perennial plants. You don't need to worry about what an annual plant is or a perennial plant. It's just a category of plants. You might find out more about that in higher. Okay, which statement is correct? We need a right statement. The population of annual plant species is lowest when grazing intensity is low. Okay, grazing intensity low. Population of annual plant species is lowest. No, because we've got 0 at high and that's lower than that, so that's wrong. Right? Plant biodiversity increases when grazing intensity is increased from low to high. Low to high. Plant biodiversity. Well, plant biodiversity is the number of species. So we get 9 species here and we get 7 species here. Low to high. So that's wrong. It doesn't increase. So that's wrong. The population of perennial plant species is highest when grazing intensity is moderate. The plant biodiversity increases when grazing intensity is increased from low to moderate. All right, let's have a look at that one first. Plant biodiversity increases. Remember, we talked about biodiversity as the number of species. So low to moderate. There are 9 species in total at low and 20 species in total at moderate. So that looks good. Now have a look at this one. The population of perennial plant species is highest when grazing intensity is moderate. So perennial species, certainly we've got more species when grazing is moderate, but species, the number of species is not the population. So that's the word you need to watch out for there. You might have just said, looked at that and picked that, because that statement is true apart from that word. If it said the number of species, of perennial plant species, or the number of perennial plant species is highest. But population has a very specific meaning in biology. It means the number of individuals of a particular species, and we're not given any numbers of species here. We're just given the number of all the species, not the number of individuals in each species. So that has to be wrong, I think. Now, we're going to go for this one. Plant biodiversity. Biodiversity is the number of species. There's definitely 20 there, and that's the most at moderate, for low to moderate. Okay. Okay. Question 21. The limiting factor graph shows the effects of increasing temperature and carbon dioxide on concentration. Carbon dioxide concentration on the rate of photosynthesis. Okay, which statement is correct for the data shown? Right? Temperature is the limiting factor at point X. No, because what's happening at point X is that you need more carbon dioxide to get faster reaction, right? So carbon dioxide is the limiting factor at point X, right? If you don't have more carbon dioxide, you don't get a faster reaction. Therefore, that's the limiting factor. So that's not temperature, so that's wrong, right? Carbon dioxide concentration is the limiting factor at point X. That's correct. So you cannot get more reaction until you get more carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is the limiting factor. Let's just look at the other two. Carbon dioxide concentration is the limiting factor at point Y. No. At that point, it's probably temperature. So because there's no further increase, so that's wrong. Temperature limiting factor at point Z. No, that's carbon dioxide again, so that's wrong. Okay. So there you go. The answer is B. Question 22. Indicator species in an ecosystem can provide information about, in this case, it's levels of pollution, right? Indicator species are sensitive species that need perfect conditions, and if they go missing, then it means that there's something messing up the conditions. The abiotic conditions usually are some form of pollution. Levels of competition, no. Number of predator species, no. Total number of organisms present, no. Okay, so question 23 and 24 refer to the following food web. There we are, spider, ladybirds, lacewing, greenfly, caterpillar. Okay, pesticides into the food chain when they're sprayed on tomato plants. Identify the organism that would accumulate the greatest concentration of pesticides in its tissues over a period of time. Right, well, you normally take the top predator for this. Let's just see. The spider's eating everybody, pretty much. Well, what we have here is bioaccumulation, right? So the greenfly get a bit of pesticide from the tomato plant, but then the ladybird eats lots of greenflies. So the ladybird gets the pesticide from the greenfly, and the spider eats lots of ladybirds. So I'm going to go for spider in that. Spider is my answer for that question. All right. The gardener noticed an increase in caterpillar damage to the tomato plants and decided to use biological control to deal with this. Which species should the gardener introduce more of? Well, if we look at the chart, the web, the only thing that eats caterpillars is lacewings, so you want lacewings, right? Let's take those. And we'll get question number 25. Ay, caramba, look at this. Question number 25 on the last page. And this is... MRSA is a type of bacterial pathogen resistant to some common antibiotics. The graph shows the number of MRSA deaths in Scotland and Wales over a 20-year period. Right. And again, we've got to choose. There's been a lot of these questions in the multiple choice paper, right? Interpreting graph questions. Okay, so which of the following is correct for this data or these data? Plural. Data's plural. Qualification Scotland. Okay, the number of MRSA deaths is in Scotland and Wales increased every year up to 2007. Okay, Scotland is the solid line, Wales is the dashed line. There's 2007 somewhere in there. We'll go there. No, there was decreases. Yeah, so that's wrong. In Scotland, there were 3 times higher. MRSA deaths were 3 times higher than in Wales in 2007. So where's 2007? What is this? That's going to be 2007 and a half, isn't it? So that's 2007 there, isn't it? So there's 20 for Wales and 56 for Scotland. 20 and 56. 56 is not 3 times higher than Scotland, than 20, so that's no good. In Scotland, deaths in Scotland were twice as high as Wales in 2012, so let's get to 2012. Let's see, 2010, that's 2012.5, there's 2012, so we have 5 and 10. Twice as high, looks like it. Is that definitely Scotland? Yep. So it's going to be C. There you go. The 2026 multiple choice paper. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope everybody did pretty well on that. But there was a lot of graph interpretation things, so you needed to know your graphs, right? And sometimes they can get a bit tricky. I certainly had to think twice about a lot of stuff there. So, and there was that one about population rather than the number of species. I think that's going to trip up quite a few people. But on the whole, most of the questions were pretty straightforward. So, not too bad. I'll see you in the next video, which is section 2. Coming soon. Well, there should be a link in this video somewhere to it. So get on that link.